I'll be okay.
So Mike's got a good question. We're on recording.
Why doesn't he just ask the question?
Let's ask the council. It's the council.
Okay, we're ready to go? Okay. Then I am gonna call our special planning commission meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the transportation master plan. There's been feedback that we need time, and I agree that we need time as the planning commission to kind of go through and say, on some levels, what are we fine with? What do we actually want to discuss more and talk about, so that when this comes before us to make our recommendation, we know what the concerns are. I've been marking some of them as we've talked about them. I thought this is my logical order brain, that it might be kind of nice to just go through it in a general sense and say, are we fine with functional classifications? Are we fine with level of service? I want this to be our discussion. If we have questions, we can reach out and ask the city, absolutely. But kind of just start through. I mean, we've been given a lot of theory, but we haven't had a lot of time to actually say, we've read through this, this is what, sorry, what's like. But, so this is like the table of contents, literally. I mean, I think, is there any concern in the executive set, like or is it only specific projects that people are concerned about? I guess that's the two approaches.
Well, I did talk about the concern about safety. There was a general piece in the vision about kind of safety and preservation of neighborhoods that I think was in the earlier sections, not in the
Okay.
later sections.
Well, I was gonna say, if you know where it is, I'm
Here, I'll-
happy to talk about it, because I've got things highlighted too. Well, you're doing that, I'm gonna ask a general question that I have about the TMP that might be a Jason question. Several places it says that they recommend the Orem update. I'm guessing their code for right of way or future. It's not part of the TMP. Is that a separate process that comes after adoption by the city council of the TMP?
So if there's any recommendations within that, then we would propose things to be brought to the planning commission to discuss whether we want to change current ordinances or things based on what's recommended.
So you take that and then you'll come back and say, okay, we're gonna talk about right of ways, and this is what the changes need to be to the code that's been recommended by this.
Right.
That would be the process.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that was just one of the questions I had. Scribbles.
Yeah,
The history of Orem.
no, I can't. Let me go look.
Okay. Yeah. Because a lot of the beginning front piece was some of the stuff that I know that we've had presentations on and talked about, the functional classification, the level of service. So, existing and future traffic projections, roadway improvements. And then some of the plan stuff, but some of the plan stuff is really at the end.
For me, most of the concerning things are projects that I don't think are warranted.
And that's what I'm kind of asking, because if it's really, we're coming from a place that most of it's acceptable, but we want to focus and talk about some of the specific projects that are listed.
There's just so many projects in here that I think they don't benefit the city of Orem, they benefit the surrounding neighbors. And, we're widening roads, impacting neighborhoods, tearing up some neighborhoods simply to accommodate UVU or Provo so that they can traipse through the city. And I just can't. And it's still on a big chunk of it's on our dime.
Are you talking specifically like 800 South? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, the 800 South overpass, so everything associated with that, that's all about UVU. It would greatly impact the neighborhood on both sides. And we'd be paying a big chunk of money for it. For what? I can't see it. We've got another overpass on 12th North. For what? It's in an industrial area in the first place. We don't want that traffic going through the neighborhoods in the first place. 8th East, that seems like just a side route for the traffic that's coming out of Provo.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to get stuck on University Parkway as it gets worse and worse because we put a bus line down the middle of the road, right? So that isn't for the neighbors in the area. I drive 8th East all the time. It is not in need of major traffic changes. So that's just to accommodate other people coming in. We're largely built out, so it ain't gonna come from us. It's gonna come from our neighbors. And maybe that will be the push to get Provo to actually put in a new offering or appropriately develop
Yeah.
close to the border.
Yeah. Yeah, part of what you're talking about. Sam, you're privy to this more than any of us are, I'm guessing. So when Horrocks does this study, this recommendation, do they do it not just for the city of Orem? I mean, they do it for, the consulting engineer for Provo as well for their traffic stuff, you know?
You know, when the regional stuff comes from the MAG model,
Right,
and they drop that all in, and what'll happen is that usually these projects are listed
yeah,
at some point, whether it's political
yeah,
or the city's starting to notice that there's a failure, then we initiate a study and then we just start the process there. Like I said, a lot of these are just things that they've identified in the model. When it comes time to actually do that project, 16th North, for example, there was folks that were trying just to sell their home, trying to get it for fair market value, knowing that we had a line on paper that showed it's gonna be widened. And that initiated a study. We started to look at traffic counts, we started to project it, and then it gained some momentum from there. So that's typically how these happen. It's not as if we're gonna come in and say, hey, according to our plan, it's 2032, it's time for me to widen 8 south, so I'm gonna start buying homes. We don't, that's not how it.
so it really is the beginnings of it start with MAG.
Yeah, MAG puts in their travel demand model, it's very high level. And so my point, it is looking at other cities, they look to where these people are coming through.
Yeah.
And they're starting to identify choke points, and they said, hey, according to growth, according to this and that, your level of service that we have in there is a D. Meaning there's only so much delay, so many cars in that corridor, it's gonna drop to an E, which means you guys wanna look at it. And that's where we look at, do we wanna build ourselves out of congestion?
A question I guess that I would have with you is, I would suggest you're far more conversant with the nuances of this, with the specifics of this. And of course, you live in Springville, but you're here and you're pretty neutral on this whole thing. You look at it from a fairly detached perspective, I would think. So the question I would ask is, what would you be concerned about seeing what's happening? Are there issues you have with it? I mean, do you have an opinion on it, or how do you feel?
On the model or
On the plan.
on the plan update?
Yeah,
The only thing to me is I understand that everyone's got an opinion on what they want from projects, and I totally get that.
yep,
I just don't want to, I really don't want this document to be a political document. I want it to be based on data, and we can move forward with data and decide those plans. And the other thing I don't want to do is I don't want to restrict ourselves from having to, if we decide to do a project, if we're looking at, hey, I'm a citizen, I'm trying to go north, south, I'm trying to go east, west, and I can't, or if I do at a certain amount of time, at a certain time of day, it's taking me a long time to do that.
yeah,
And if we've eliminated a corridor from being eligible for federal or county or other dollars to where we can do it at a discount, then we have to come up with that on our own dime.
Yeah.
It's not to say that it can be added back, it's just add some more time to that time kind of. So that's the only thing, and I understand that it may not be, in everyone's best interest to do some of these projects. I mean, for me, when I look at, for me to go anywhere in the city, I try not to go on Center Street, I try not to go on State Street. I try and stay off these other corridors so I can go ahead and go north, south, east, and west. And it does drive me crazy. I am constantly asking UDOT in the morning when I'm wanting to cross 8th North, and I know they have their coordination, but you are better off in the morning hours on 8th North to cross, if you're on Main Street, to turn right, go down, make a U-turn and come back and then make another right, than you are to sit there and wait for that signal to turn. And that, to me, that's a huge disservice to the citizens of Orem. So when I look at some of these things like, 8 South Overpass, it is a lot of money, but if I'm wanting to go to the airport and I don't want to go out to Parkway to get down to Geneva Road, if I can have another way to do it without going maybe to Fourth North or going up to Center Street, and it's essentially, it's $120 million, it's a large amount of money, but if now I've created a better quality of life for those folks in there that are wanting to get down without having to go to University Avenue or Parkway, where everyone's trying to go to Provo, I think maybe it might be worth it. But I mean, that's how I'm thinking, is how can I make it so that the citizenry here have good east-west and north-south connectivity? That's truly how I look at it, is there ways that we can make sure that this works? And if we want to eliminate some of those projects, I totally get it. But it's just kind of a placeholder, and it keeps it eligible for federal funds.
Well, it looks to me like the accessibility to federal funds is best assured by long-term planning.
Yeah.
In other words, you have to be have your name in the hopper well in advance to be considered for federal funding.
Right, because we go to MAG, and like this year, we're gonna go through the TIP funding. And the question they always ask when a new community comes in with a big ask for a project is, has this been identified on your transportation master plan? And it's irritating because Lehigh is doing that right now. They want to make a connection from Redwood Road to I-15. And when you're on paper and looking straight down, it's right there at the point of the mountain, regardless that you're having a huge superstructure that's gonna have to take you up there, because there's a large amount of elevation, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're wanting to put it on there and study it, that's great, but it was never on a master plan. And it's like, why don't you guys go through the planning process and understand that, you know what, maybe we need another connection here. And I agree, Provo should have another interchange. And we just had a MAG meeting, and there was someone that came in that said, hey, we don't want you guys to buy our homes. I mean, they're going through that same effort of, I think Orem would like to see 820 North become another freeway connection and hopefully offload some of our parkway. But those folks in there don't want to.
Yeah, if you drive through Provo, they don't have very many wide roads.
Yeah,
They've actually cared about their citizenry and kept it down low and not let MAG and UDOT inflicted it on their neighbors, to be honest.
But I'm gonna say, I think Provo has had long-term specific desires of how they want their city to look, and they've maintained that.
We have,
but it's at the
Not
cost of
necessarily,
Orem.
but the cost of Orem, and
Yeah.
well, Springville's
Our
finally
largest
getting there,
city
but
is
like,
the
you know what
best.
I mean, but and I mean, that's some level of what we're trying to do, is say,
Yep.
what do we want in Orem? And I think there is several levels within the TMP and the decisions we need to make. I mean, first we gotta recognize that most of this is actually already in our city code right now, we're just updating portions of it.
Well, so this is part of the general plan, that's why it goes to the planning commission and the council. So essentially, if there's things in this that we don't wanna have when we go to update it, then, I mean, yes, right now as it sits, these are in code.
A lot of this is already in.
Yeah, so when you guys looked at, you look at that executive summary, it talks about the things that were highlighted. I did try and get a strikeout of red line version, so you guys could actually compare and contrast these 173 page
It's
documents.
ridiculous.
Very time consuming, but I tried to get that so you guys could see what was,
And maybe if we identify some areas that we want to specifically look at, that might be.
yeah.
were you contacted by Jeff Lamson or UVU about a meeting we had last week? Yeah, so I met with Steve Anderson and Jeff, and one of the questions I asked.
Who is Steve Anderson?
He's the head of university relations or community relations at UVU. He sits up from President Jimenez, right across from President Jimenez on the third floor there. I said, how would UVU feel about really closing 8th South and closing UVU off from the neighborhood? So we're side by side, but we're not intermingling cars and traffic. And he said, well, I haven't really thought about it, but he would, so I was just, one of the takeaways is I thought he and Jeff were gonna set up a meeting with you about stuff like that, so for me, the 8th South interchange makes 100% sense for me if 8th South is closed. If 8th South remains open, then it's a no. So if I have to go forward on the current plan the way it is right now, I'm gonna take that off. Unless I know that UVU and and the city of Orem agree to kind of keep, to kind of coexist, but keep each other, keep the traffic away from one another. There's tons of traffic there. I go through UV all the time. So this will cause a problem for me because I cutting through UVU is the fastest way for me to get to the freeway. And people from UVU cut through my neighborhood at the same time. So part of these, when you say political, I say, well, what does Orem want to do? Do we want to have potentially a different relationship with UVU in terms of coexisting peacefully and working together and keeping things more separate? Or does the connectivity in Orem have to then include the connectivity with the state? These are big questions, right?
I'm going off of what you're saying, maybe this is a Gary question, but is there, between what we're trying to do in improving the transportation master plan and having some of these discussions about what we really want to see around UVU and what we really want to see, can we come back and retroactively update the transportation master plan if we have discussions and say, no, we don't? I mean, obviously, we're not making changes, we're making recommendations to the city council to make changes. Yeah, I just want to make that.
Yes, the planning commission's role is to make recommendations on the transportation master plan to the municipal council. Part of that recommendation can be that you would just recommend the document as it exists right now. Your recommendation could be, don't approve it. Your recommendation could be, approve it completely. Your recommendation could be, we make these suggested changes to it, and you send that on. An important aspect of what you can do is you can make whatever recommendations you ultimately make to the municipal council, you can come in and say, but we want not only maybe some specific textual changes or no changes to it, but we think in the future, we need to start discussing this item, this item, this item, and this item, kind of a more global approach to it. For instance, one of the things that, every city is concerned about and their transportation master plan does is it deals with impact fees, because it can be the basis upon which your impact fees can be adjusted and things like that. And impact fees are extremely important. So you could make a recommendation saying, yeah, we recommend that council, you deal with some of these things so we can get impact fees. But some of these projects that we're talking about, we're very concerned about project A, B, C, D. We want you to take a look at these and really come in and start now. Don't just do an update of the transportation master plan Sam, what are we doing? Every 5 years every 5 years we'll do an amendment to it. It's maybe start now looking at some specific aspects to it in conjunction with the TAC. And that could be your recommendation. So with policy, I'm sorry, but that's a big, long-winded way that took up a lot of time of saying you can be very, there's a lot of opportunities and different ways you can go about it. And it doesn't need to be the end. You can also make a recommendation to deal with some of these things on a more ongoing basis, if that makes sense.
So Gary, when you're doing the training for us on the administrative side of things, this is an opportunity for the planning commission to take all the things they've learned as they've seen all the different zoning and issues that you come up with and say whatever you want. I mean, there's no rule that you can't voice this or that, which I think is very helpful for the city council too, is to hear what the planning commission learned and what they feel about the master plan.
Yes, and it's that legislative context that we're in, and so to really make a recommendation that really touches on things. One of the difficulties with such a big plan is to come in and really dive into it. While they could take up a tremendous amount of time, that may be the appropriate way to go. Another way might be to make a recommendation And with your recommendation, say, let's start, because once you make a plan, you almost instantly start amending it and changing it. Or tweaks to it. So that could be part of what your recommendation would be is, here's our big policy recommendation, but we need more time on a couple of more in-depth study of certain issues, whatever they may be, individual projects or the theoretical basis upon which your whole plan is established, those types of things that are big items that you may not want to get bogged down in at right now. Does that make sense?
Well, my point is just that they have the freedom to look at the plan and say, here's my concern, here's my support, there's no rules being in place saying you can't say this or do that.
Correct.
I'm not gonna say, you have the freedom to do any evaluation they want to have.
Yeah, and that can come in different forms too. It could come in a list of items over which you have concern and things like that for the council to focus on and look at, as opposed to coming up with one recommendation as a planning commission of exact precise language, change line 12 on page 743 to say in rather than inside, or something
Of
like
course,
that.
we've got an attorney, so she would be doing it. Not gonna-
Well, it's a good way to get free work, right?
That's right.
And that is kind of where we have to have something, some decision.
Yeah, and in these meetings, it's
Yeah.
good to make sure, because they are being recorded and we have to take notes. And so be careful of the side conversations that we have, because we've got to track these things.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is we have to get to a point where we have some ability to make some recommendation to the city council. We have to move this ball along a little bit. We can't hold on to it. I guess we could
you're
hold
right.
on to it forever, but we
No,
need,
then we just kick it down.
we
the road.
need, and we need to
Don't wanna
have
do
some.
that.
And I kind of like that idea of saying, hey, this is just, I'm throwing this out in general. We're okay with the plan, but we have these concerns. And I think that
Listen.
might be a better approach to dealing with all whatever pages of stuff.
Sure.
And so like I said, I've been
That's
kind of
agreeable.
writing down, but your proposals, you sent the email and you've talked about them a couple times. I do think that's a great recommendation of adding safety hazards and traffic impacts. Like all those things could be listed and say, these are our concerns. And move it on. So, and maybe that is, that's where I was trying to start. Either we say we're generally okay and here are the specifics. We just have to have something to present, something to.
Yeah, I think I'm okay, but there are specific, I think we should highlight the projects that we have heartburn with, right?
Yeah. Is that a
Mike's
list?
got a bunch of them, and I've got, my biggest one is the number 4, yeah. Can we go to page 49 on the project list, just to?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Is there anything else within the document before we try and tackle this?
I said a couple of things, one was in the executive summary and the other was in
4.9 on
4.9
connectivity.
on connectivity. Those were the 2 points I had, that's all I had in terms
And I say,
of. Do we
The
want to?
only one thing in general, I find all the bike lanes concerning, because it's a big friction point. I'd rather we come up with a better solution that keeps the bikers safer than being right in the middle of traffic, especially kids. I'd rather see wider sidewalks and put the bikes
and
in a safer space away from the cars.
that is a whole longer discussion.
Yes.
We had policy
But
discussions we had.
that's the one thing that I could think of that's general discussion within the document.
Yeah.
Other than projects for me.
Mhm.
And it's just, I don't think bike lanes are a safe thing, so.
Okay, I don't think there should be continuous full intersections anyway. But that's just me. So yeah, so bike lanes is a concern for you. Are there any other general things that we've talked about? We've talked about a lot, but we're generally okay. I guess that's the question. Are we generally okay with the plan? There's just some specifics we'd like to discuss.
Well, I think
a lot of
the
plans
UVU question, yeah, a lot of the UVU question, I think, we can kick it down the road if we take away number 4, right? we're not gonna resolve this in time, and so
Yeah,
if we just take project number 4 off the list, then it'll come up. It'll have to come up.
hold that, I'll put.
So this was drafted how long ago? So 5 years is up for the next one,
This was updated, what?
about when?
In 2015, the original was done, but this update was done actually a year ago.
November
Yeah,
28th,
we've been
2022.
sitting on it for almost,
Yeah.
we're almost to a year.
Yeah, and in the meantime, from 2015 till now, we've done a UVU area study, we've done some other studies of some of the infrastructure that we have, and that's why some of these projects that weren't on the list in 2015, the northbound direct connect, this 8 South overpass, some of those weren't on there. I think 8 South had always been planned. They looked at an interchange at one point and they wanted to do phase 2 of the UVX. They wanted to take UVX that route instead of coming up Parkway. But then I think they also, when they modeled, they saw that it actually had some benefits and we took cars off of University Parkway, so that's how I'm thinking of it.
Do you get much input with these people, Horrocks? I mean, do they ask your opinions on things?
Yeah, they'll put together, I mean, when they have the model, we sit down and we look at the model because someone's creating the model and it's
Yeah.
there, that's where you go from science to an art and you start looking at your origin and destinations and where you feel like how many cars are gonna come when they start assigning to it and then it gets modeled and it's put in. So there is that component where we look at it, because we'll look at our data, because we'll have counts for South and Northwest, and we know how many through, how many left, and how many right, so we can estimate as they're getting down to these areas, it's like, you guys are a little heavy on this, I think we're a little light, if you need to include these things. And yeah, but a lot of this too is very much a macro look, and then, like I said, when it comes time to it, we would definitely get into the weeds, get current counts.
So this bicycle concern that Mike expressed, what do you think about, I mean, there are people that are pushing more bike availability and accessibility? I used to ride my bike a lot, but I know too many people that have been hit. It's just not a matter of if, but when.
Correct.
And I was not a safe driver, I must say. I would get right out with the traffic. I couldn't go 60 miles an hour, I must say, too. But it is a concern because sometimes they think they have the dominant place in the road. So you just have to watch out for them all the time. But what are your thoughts about the bike accessibility now?
Wow, that's
You kind of smile.
I
but
keep it to 3 minutes.
I don't think I can. I mean, the problem is really we need to probably update our bike and ped master plan. That was done in 2010. And I would suggest too,
Oh.
this,
I just went through that today.
I mean,
Okay.
part of this should be that something, hey, you guys make your recommendation, but you guys can direct staff to open up a whole study and incorporate both. I mean, the short answer, no. Striping is kind of a false sense of security.
Yeah.
I think we can do some other things, but that turns really political really quick because you have people coming in. Because I've asked the bicycle community for, warrants. We have warrants when it needs to put in a stop sign and signal and lanes. What are warrants? I mean, because it's not really a field of dreams, even though they treat them like that. If you build it, then they will come.
Yeah.
So you spend money, you stripe it, and you guys drive it, and you see 4 cars on that route during that time. You see it, you're like, you spent a lot of money, and then I get that phone call, right? So, but I'm all for trying to protect and to create some sort of buffer. But that's a lot of political courage on people to go in and say, wow, these guys are gonna come on court, but I can't park my whatever in front of my house because I got this bike lane. It's like, well, we wanna make them safe, but how are we gonna do this? So yeah, I'd love to sit at the table and figure out a solution for that.
Well, one end of the spectrum, you've got people that just want bikes to dominate.
Yeah, and I have a hard time with them too. It's like, no, we're gonna work on this together. I mean, it's making all the utopian
It's
society,
not just
we check
bikes
our
these
car keys.
I think it's Copenhagen.
Well, it's all the
Motorized
motorized stuff,
scooters,
and I think
yeah.
we need an ordinance for that.
That's true, that's very
But
much
that-
changed the whole thing.
But like that, I think that comment about updating the bike and pedestrian master plan update, I think that's a great thing for us to recommend, say, we're accepting this, but we really need.
Yeah.
We recommend that we start an update on some UV traffic concern, I think that's That's a good one. Getting down into some of the, so I'm gonna move forward, then on the whole, we accept it. It's just some things that we wanna talk about, that we either need to look into more or we wanna talk about suggesting they be eliminated. From things I've had in the past, page 25. Mike, you had concerns about the overpass on 12th North as well, and then Murray, I think you both had concerns about the overpass on 8 South.
8 south and 700 south.
Yeah, whatever.
Since it angles across. And-
Correct.
And even if I wouldn't have as big a problem if it didn't angle into 7th South and, impact the neighbors instead of the college, but you keep it on the college property instead of right up against the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
But I still don't see any value to the people in Orem in general. If you wanna get to the other side, you can go to 4th South pretty easily for whatever you're gonna go over to Geneva for. So this is all UTA and UVU. And it's got an $8 million ticket to the citizens of Orem
So
for something that just doesn't benefit the people.
and back on page 25, there's a connection, the 800 South connection to Campus Drive.
Yes,
800
that's
west.
the one we're talking.
So the very bottom one.
This is just expanding 8th North,
Yeah, no, the
and then the
800
one, the bottom one,
Yeah, it's not currently not connected.
connection to UP campus.
Yeah, I think it should remain just closed.
Or it needs to be in the realm of things we need. to
Well,
discuss.
UVU would have to change their traffic pattern in order to make this work. And
Yeah.
unless this becomes a joint effort between UVU and the city of Orem, this is an accident waiting to happen.
Which one's Campus Drive? Is that?
It's the one that goes around UVU.
The one it goes by President Hall or
Okay.
the president's house and it comes out of that light
It's
there
one
across from
It
UCAS.
snakes through.
Yeah,
all of
Yeah, it
campus.
goes by the Institute
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're.
Comes
talking
into 8
Yep,
South
yep.
and then joins 12th West.
about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Marie, where is that located? I'm just taking notes.
Page 25,
Page 25.
fifth bullet point.
I'm scrolling things too, so. Okay. Anything else on page 25? We wanna highlight? Okay, then I'd skip over to page 35, because I know Helena's brought up multiple things on there of concern, that's the mags. And this is one of the ones I was just wondering about, mag is updated, theirs. Is there going to, are we just gonna keep this the way it is and next time? Mag doesn't update, I guess this is the way it is.
What page is that on? Sorry.
Page 35,
Thank you.
Well, but there's some of the ones are the same, right? For
Yeah.
example,
TP.
the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
this one breaks it into
South
phases.
Campus Drive.
This is what Max, the regional
Right.
transportation plan is saying.
So the seventh bullet point, the I-15 Orem 800 South Campus Drive, the new 5-lane I-15 bridge, that's similar to the one on page 25, right? It's the same thing.
So I would be interested in the numbers around the Orem Center Street from Geneva to I-15. It's already congested right there at 12th West. We're just creating a bigger pipe to congest even more for the vineyard traffic if we widen that even more up to Geneva Road.
So that's an area you'd like some more discussion about.
Yeah, some of this, I think the mayor and council, they need to talk to Vineyard about forcing retail in the vineyard rather than ITS.
Now, why do you say that widening that would make more congestion?
It would just bring more vineyard.
Because I now got two extra
Center
lanes.
Street, yeah. It would bring
Okay,
more
bring
vineyard
my-
traffic
okay.
through Center Street through Orem.
Okay,
Rather than, right now they get off on I-15
yeah,
because that's an easier way.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I just think some of those things can be alleviated by our neighbors being good neighbors. You know.
Yeah,
rather
you mean
than-
neighbors being vineyard.
Yeah,
I
rather
was gonna
than
say the irony here, because we're talking about. the
counting on
irony.
us to provide everything for them.
Right.
And then, cause these things are directly off of Mag's RTP, correct?
Yeah.
This list. So this is what Mag has identified at a regional level needs to be done to alleviate cross-border traffic. Is that a correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or
Sandy,
facilitate, I should say.
if we're gonna have a conversation with UVU about closing off 800 South, should Mag be included in that conversation?
They can be, yeah.
Cause you'll be contacted about this, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we got, probably UDOT as well, cause it's gonna, you close that off and then you got, yeah.
Well, you close the bus doesn't come up 800 South anyway, the bus could flow exactly the same
No, it
way.
wouldn't be UTA, it would be UDOT, and it would be MAG and probably, or we don't have, and UVU, we don't be at the table.
UDOT because of the overpass.
Well,
It would
UDOT is because I think the model helps with operations, both the Parkway and Center. If people within the city can use 8 South and all of a sudden you can't, you gotta go out 4th West and come around and come down, or you're coming down on 12th West, so, I mean, the way
You can still use 8 South, you just go over on 8 West.
I mean, I guess the way I try and look at these things, is like, if you guys had your house, and you have how many entrances in your home? 3, 2 or 3? So if you start taking those away, what happens to the one that you leave? Higher traffic, I mean, so the way I look at the city is we kind of want to have multiple ways to get around. We wouldn't want to take our house and say, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of the garage door and the back door, we're just gonna use the front door now. Well, it's like, well then, that means in order for me to get the back door, I gotta go through the front, go clear around, hopefully I have the gate, now I gotta build a gate. So you kind of want to have multiple ways to get in and out, so you're not focusing, because if we close 8 South, all of a sudden the traffic that was there, it's gonna go somewhere, right? So you're gonna be splitting that now.
I understand.
But in the same venue, you wouldn't wanna start putting 2 or 3 doors on the side of your house, just because it's easier and you don't have to be bothered to go around the front.
No, but I mean, but just want to look, there's gonna be it's
Right.
cause effect.
But what, why did BYU close their, why do they have a much more restricted traffic plan? So UVU might have a different interest in the
Sure.
city, right?
Sure.
And that can also feed into MAG and UDOT's plan, and it actually fits really nice. It actually facilitates, I think, makes their traffic patterns easier for them. If it works for them, it works for us, why do we not do it?
Sure.
BYU closed our campus off so to become a walkable campus, so that for vehicular, for pedestrian safety, because their students were getting hit by cars and trucks.
You can't even drive on campus.
Yeah, you're not even allowed to ride a vehicle.
You have to walk your bike across campus.
Oh, do you know?
Oh.
Campus safety.
So that's why they closed it off.
BYU is not the only college in America that's done that, though.
No, it's very
It's quite
common.
very
Yeah.
common for college
absolutely.
campuses to do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for the most part, we really don't have a road that goes right through UVU, it goes around the periphery.
You know, UVU is very walkable internally. In fact, you can go through every building without ever going outside on campus. But it was always nice in the winter. It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
No, I think the further discussion of that is.
So the State Street corridor, that's at the discretion of the UDOT. We have little or no say regarding that.
Yes and no, I
So
mean,
if they were to
for
put
them, I mean, UDOT is in the business to move cars, now they're starting to change their mind and they're looking at other modes of transportation too. Active, who knows if they end up, absorbing UTA at some point. But for State Street, for them to widen, they would be coming to the city. And like I've said before, it's been identified to have a great separated, essentially interchange at University Parkway and State. But the businesses along there didn't support that. They didn't want to lose their visibility and whatnot, so the state said, that's fine, we'll go ahead and prioritize this money. When you guys are ready, once you've wallowed in this quagmire of traffic and trying to do whatever, then we can come back and visit it. But I mean, for the most part, it's huge things on State Street at intersections. The CFI, we would not want to put it at CFI either. They are, I mean, the only nice thing about a CFI is CFI is a.
What's a CFI?
It's continuous flow intersection. It's what's at
Okay.
Parkway and Sandhill right now.
Yeah.
The only upside to a CFI is that you purchased all the right of ways, so when we wanna come in and go with an overpass, we don't have to purchase any more right of way, because they're so dang big. They've got the land and they bought it for, hopefully at a lower cost because it's years before.
Yeah.
But they're so big and I think they're so confusing and doesn't do anything for cyclists. And unless you use it a lot, it confuses a lot of people. You got a lot of people running red lights they don't know if they're turning left, they don't know if they're going.
Cutting traffic, because I didn't want to be in that lane.
Yeah, so so for State Street, it would be an involved process. They would talk to businesses and whatnot, and I don't see them doing anything like a big money or anything like that.
Okay, so that's the mag stuff, and I think it's assumed in some of the other stuff.
Correct.
So do we wanna move on to page 49? Is that the one that you're keep saying number 4 too?
Yep,
Okay,
what else, you got some others?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much where we're talking about widening all these north-south corridors to 5 lanes, I don't see it. I don't see the value. It's to offset traffic for neighbors again. And, because these models, they talk about load, but we're already developed in all of these corridors. I mean, you can't drive down one of them and really find an empty lot. So the traffic ain't coming from us. I'd rather find ways to mitigate or have the other people find a different route. Don't go through the neighborhoods.
We could charge a toll fee for any outside foreign residents.
Yeah, there you go. Turn them all into toll roads and give everybody a sticker who lives here.
actually, that's what I learned in Norway, that's how they fund their projects. That they determine how long they think it's gonna take to pay it back. They divide it by the number of cars they think there's going to be. And then it's toll until it's paid off. So like if they need a tunnel through a mountain or they need to expand something, it's toll until it's paid off, and then once it's paid off, it's free. I thought that was a real interesting model.
So you're saying everything, for example, on page 49 and page 50, this.
A lot of these are all signals, and I'm curious what that's all for. Do we need,
Signal updates.
I mean, we got millions in signal updates, but are our signals bad? Is it just we're trying to get new technology?
So like,
What does it buy us?
Like 17, the traffic signal update G Road 16th North. One, it's a project that's been identified. It's a UDOT, the funding source, so there's no responsibility to Orem, but that one is gonna be adding dual lefts, and that's all contingent on when that rail line is relocated. Because right now, my wife tells me about this all the time, and I have to tell her it's not me, but because it's just a single left.
Yeah,
If you're heading south on Geneva Road, you're sitting in there for multiple cycles.
yeah, I use that all the time.
So that's just being able to widen that at dual lefts and kind of help move cars through. So some of those, it's usually just, they've identified with growth.
So you need a different style of light because you have a new lane and you need an extra light.
And some of it too is it's like I said, it's their model, and they say because of the growth and this little point here, you guys might have to do some sort of a signal update. We look at it, you know what, I don't think we could do anything if we added a left or I mean, some of these might be like what we did on here on Center Street, where we just modified the median to allow the stacking for that left turn to not spill over into the through lane. I don't know if you guys noticed, that's really all we did, we just extended that median, because we had such a short left turn pocket, they would back up and then all of a sudden the through lane wouldn't work.
Just headed south.
This is just headed west.
Headed west,
Yeah, so we just went ahead and then, so we could stack all the way back to Fort East if we wanted to, but it allowed the through lane to not interrupt us, so we could go ahead and improve operations. So
Right.
a lot of them, it's simple, little things like that.
so do you wanna get more granular on terms of which ones, like?
Or if it's like he's saying that we just need to look at our signal policy, or if it's.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of detail on
Yeah.
what the signals are for, and I'm wondering, why are we doing this? Or
Like I
is
said,
it
yeah. it's
new
just a-
tech, I mean, or?
Like some of them we've
Answer this
allowed,
question.
some of them, like a signal update, we put in flashing yellow arrows, because now it allows, we have enough gaps. Because we have enough lanes, we have gaps, so it allows cars to go ahead and do that left turn, we don't have to make it permissive. So, or permitted, so it's simple little things like that, but if we see it, it's in here, because I've even looked at ones compared to the other one, I'm like, we're not gonna do anything there. We don't have the numbers that warrant extending the right turn, or there's not enough to have dual lefts because we'd have to have receiving left, so let's not do that. But their model is just that, hey, with this growth and what the governor's office is giving us, we put it into this, it looks like this is gonna be a choke point.
Yeah,
Some of them-
there's just no detail on
Yeah.
it, so it's hard to know
This stuff-
what are we paying for.
This stuff's expensive. I look at the one that just completed the 4th West, 4th South,
Yeah,
the $500,000 to do that.
well,
May not have cost that much, but that's what was,
It costs more.
the signal itself, I guess, to be, cost about 84,000.
that much.
We bought 2 slivers of property, I think about 10,000 each.
Yeah.
But then the tank project bought
Okay.
the southwest corner, so.
So that's why the big ticket is more because we're probably picking up real estate to widen things and expand that way. Cause I'm like, you know, 380,000 for a lane, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's the right of way.
Maybe we should open up our own shop.
Yeah, no, it's the right of way, that's the expensive part, cause the metal itself to hang it, like I said, was 84,000.
Yeah.
Off the state contract.
I worked for a steel mill, so it seemed really expensive.
Yeah, it's the property.
So these signals that, these systems you put in place, so they sense the traffic is coming. If it doesn't come for a while, then it switches the other direction. Is that how they
So
work?
what will happen is you either have signals that are running free, which means that they're gonna have a set cycle for each east, west, and north, south through movement. And once that amount of allotted time has been given, then it will set up, as soon as a car comes through or comes in and trips it, then it'll go ahead and switch. Some intersections are in coordination, like during the PM peak, AM peak on Center Street, it's gonna give priority to the east-west. So it's gonna give more green time, they call it, to east-west, regardless if you're sitting there for a minute or whatnot, it's gonna hold you because they wanna hurry up and clear all of that. And then they'll give you a short amount of time to go ahead and cross. Like I said, if you see it on 8th North and Main Street from like 6 AM,
Yeah.
it makes sense, mid-afternoon. But it's amazing, it essentially runs free, I think, until 6 AM, and then it goes into UDOT's coordination on 8th North. And you will sit there for 2 minutes, and you'll look, and you have plenty of gaps, but they're just priority, they wanna move cars. Which, if you're going east-west on 8th North in the morning, it's like, wow, this is awesome, I just cruised through this whole thing, I stopped once.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people on the side streets waiting.
Are those adjusted? Who studies those?
Well, the state owns those lanes.
Yeah, so
No, but I'm talking the city. I mean, I appreciate that one, but
But the city does, yeah, and then all of ours, our detection is by Wavetronics and it's radar. They've gone, they used to do wire loops, those would short out, then we did video, and the video would short out, or you get, the lens would get dirty with snow or rain. And now it's radar. And it's really nice that Wavetronics is the company that does it, and they're in Springville, they got a big huge campus, and really, it's kind of nice that they're local.
yeah,
They're world class at it too.
yeah.
They're the best in the world.
Yeah, and we use them for our permanent count stations and things like that, so it's pretty accurate, it's not as accurate as someone like the old school hose counters, I don't know if you see those, those are little tubes with across.
Yeah, yeah.
As long as those tubes don't have holes in them, they're great. But if it's not snowing, they get plowed up and cement.
Okay, so did that answer some of your other questions?
Yeah.
This section, okay. Is there any other section before the big one at the end that we want to discuss? Remember we had the addition on 4.9 and that will show us.
My things were more, I didn't break them into sections, I'm just concerned about projects and these
Yeah.
widening through neighborhoods. You know, like I said, as I travel through, I don't see the need for it. And I just don't see impacting the residential neighborhoods. But it's not benefiting the city itself.
Yeah, I totally get, that's why we go through a pretty good process to make sure that it's. I mean, they're on here, like I said, 16th Northeast folks want to sell, they're like, no one wants to buy, it takes me forever to get out of here. What's the process, and we explain it to them, and then it's been very beneficial.
That's on the east side
That was on the west side.
or the west side, yeah, I was thinking the west side.
Yeah,
Because We don't feel that way on the east side. We don't want 5 lanes.
No, I completely get it.
Are there other projects that we haven't, I mean, we've come back to some several times over, so we seem to keep identifying that there's just a handful.
Yeah, it's all been my projects. They're about what road widening.
No,
You're good?
I mean, I just think the high density increase has impacted the traffic dramatically. I mean, I don't know what singularly anything more than that that's impacted the traffic, both in terms of flow as well as the noise. Where I live, I mean, the noise is greatly enhanced. I'm not too far from State Street. I'm just about a block west of Main Street at 500 South. I'm fine though. I'm not complaining. I think you do a wonderful job with it. I'm amazed traffic that moves as well as it does. I do think a younger population, sometimes you have to watch, make sure a car doesn't go under my car. Some of the aggressive drivers.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the noise, you know, of vehicles. Again, the young bucks, they like to make a lot of noise, let you know they're there.
My father-in-law likes to do that too.
Does he?
Just when he takes off.
Great, are there any other additional concerns, or that pretty much covers it?
That covers it for me.
Jason, any projects or areas of concern for you?
No, not right now. It's just, I spent the last couple of weeks talking to traffic in Hartford County, Connecticut, and Greenwich. And we had a lot of eye-opening statements to make, and this is, each city and the citizens are torn. It's something that is deemed essential to do. And the issue we have is how to pay for it and what kind of involvement UDOT has with UVU. And so this is where we're kind of stuck as far as growth. We have so many other things to tackle, and right now what I'm seeing is we actually don't have a vision for this. The master plan that was there, it's, you know, they canceled for what I consider actually good reasons. But now we have another master plan in place. We don't have any, so we don't have what we want to be when we grow up. So we don't have an aim.
I think we think we're growing up.
But in the process, it's a lot of growing pains because we have not established our direction, just like our Highland did. So when we see things like this come through, it makes sense because it's more reactive than it's proactive, but based on a reactive nature of not having a plan. So what are we doing now? What are we going to do? Because there's not going to be a cap on UV. It's not going to happen as far as student cap. There'll be extra traffic. There will be some redevelopment, whether we like it or not. With the stuff that matches code, where it's administrative, we can't do nothing about it. Legislative stuff, we're working, you know, and electing the people that can stand for the city when it comes to high density.
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22. Either you don't do it and you suffer so much more, you do it, you suffer so much on your budget. So I mean, we need to have a vision, we need to have a name, and that's just the biggest thing. And like in Greenwich, they did the zero parking policy for 2 years. It went back to per square foot. This is just the second it happened where that was advocated. It was an absolute nightmare. And to the fact where not just break-ins, there was accidents right and left. One development right by the Amtrak. So, and I went and visited that, it makes absolute sense. It's a big building that has 300 units and zero parking required. They think that having it by the Amtrak going to the city would invite all the Wall Street guys to live in there. Didn't happen. It doesn't happen like anybody thinks. It never does. And being a city where we actually have a lot of outdoors, do we need transportation? You know what? I have looked at the buses and the public transportation. It's being heavily used in certain times of the day. Makes total sense. Is it taking cars out of the road in comparison to the cost? The cost would have bought 4 cars to each person that is using it. So, yeah, you know what I mean? So so what are we gonna do? We're gonna say, "Oh, go for it," and then just keep in mind what we're dealing with here is not a government entity. Holy government is quasi. So there is a special interest, whether we like it or not, there's money going into somebody's pocket that is not coming into. That carries weight, and that's not being addressed. Until we get rid of that, as a state, we're always gonna have the ones that wanna benefit financially. So we're kind of like drinking from a fire hose and trying to put out fires that we could have, I don't know if we could have seen a while ago, based on the structure of the state and the city has. But everybody's doing their best. City is like everybody's doing this, but they're going like this, doing the best. So now some of those projects, yeah, is there a possibility, I mean, limiting growth is stupid, but is there, what can our city handle as far as population? That's one, is that a possibility? I've seen other cities do it, where they're like, oh, we can have only that many many homes per acre, and that's it, and we have some of that in our zoning, but.
Yeah, the thing, implementing policies like that is definitely possible.
I mean, from the council, Terry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so,
Good.
what is,
I heard possible. And
no, what's the council have in their mind about a new direction for the city and a new aim, a new plan? Is there something being discussed in the master plan, or just scrap the old one, substituted by the one that was archaic and that was it? Or are we gonna start having a, like, is there something going to aim into more unified understanding? Because just to keep in mind, the city had, even though I did not agree with the master plan, I did not personally agree with it the way it affected my personal property on State Street. But in the same time, when that plan was in there, there was it's not the harmony we wanted, but there was a harmony between the city and the master plan, and yes.
I can probably add some context to that. So we've been discussing with Mayor Young, and I don't know if Councilman Peterson's aware of this yet, but we've been asked to relook at State Street. But our feedback to the mayor has been, it's a big animal to do the entire thing. So we recommended that we just look at one area, and then the Arts District is kind of stuck, that people really latched onto the idea of an Arts District. So what we've been talking to the mayor about doing, and Jason's going to be working on an RFP, is to bring a consultant on that's an expert kind of in developing arts districts. And we would look at just the Arts District area from around 4th South to 8th South. And maybe it's 4th East to Orem Boulevard. And then within that, we're looking at how we can synergize and grow the CIRA, Center for the Arts, and the park, and bring that together in kind of an arts village with like niche shops and an type of an experience that will draw people, that will be something that would really bring value to the community.
With a little downtownish.
Kind of, yeah.
It's kind of hard in our city.
Arts downtown.
And arts, well, yeah.
Kind of like a Gardner Village in a way.
Right.
We've been talking with the CEO of CIRA, and he's totally supportive and on board. And so we're going through those preliminary documentation to go out and start that process. The idea is, let's just focus on one area and see what happens and what the public supports. And if it works there, then we can look at another area. So kind of going with more of
Terry, was
a
that
micro
yours
solution than a macro solution. Yeah.
And I go along with what Casey has said, and I've said this on other occasions too, that it would be nice to have a more connected vision of what Orem is and what we're trying to be and where we're trying to get. And it is kind of hard. Sometimes when we make our decisions, we are like looking at this, and it's just this, and that's all it is. And we're not seeing or projecting out how this is really going to affect. And we're kind of stuck in that pattern. And to move Orem forward, to make Orem, to continue Orem to grow economically and for the citizens, we have to have somewhere to aim towards.
So we have an overall general plan that covers the entire city. And within that, we have neighborhood plans. And then we have the State Street Master Plan, but that was part of the general plan itself. So just because we got rid of the master plan, we still have an overall general plan that dictates what the city will grow into, right? Whether that's commercial, residential, or whatever. And then the individual neighborhood plans, which there are 9 of them, also are appendixes to that general plan, so that also gives you directions for specific neighborhoods as well. So do we need to amend the general plan? Probably in a couple of years, we need to look at the entire general plan and bring that up to speed as well. But the State Street master plan that we're talking about, or State Street amendment, is just an amendment to that overall general plan. So we still have to, I guess.
We have a vision, but our biggest pain point in the city is State Street.
Yeah, and focus on State Street.
State Street and East North and East South. Those are the biggest pain points that we have currently. And when the State Street master plan kind of was aiming to resolve it, but not in a way that most of the citizens wanted, that's why I added to this entire equation to be that.
So some of those things we've kept, right, the setbacks, the landscaping, those types of things, the city council kept those in ordinance. We took out the other, high density and things like that. So there is some direction based on, we've codified over time to when people start redeveloping on State Street, they're gonna have that 15-foot landscape, they're gonna have the landscaping requirements, things like that. So that's in place. But the overall general direction for State Street right now is simply commercial, right? So that's really what we have.
Okay,
So now we're just gonna,
after I sold my properties and quit, right?
so now we're gonna focus on, let's say, the Arts District, and then go out if that's successful to get rid of you.
It was a big bit, yeah, I can feel it.
So the next slide,
That's a great answer, yeah, that's it.
we really have no appetite for high density apartments on State Street. The master plan had 10,000 apartments on State Street. The majority of people, city councils do not want apartments on State Street. Don't want high density apartments in most places in the city, so, but with what Ryan's saying, could we do better with what State Street looks like? Absolutely. I mean, it's a long corridor, so there's
Another question.
but if we can work with commercial, real estate, developers, and make this a better looking State Street, that's great. But I don't think an answer to that is sticking a bus or a train down the middle of it and gutting businesses. So, I mean, the message is Orem is definitely open for business. We want businesses to come. We want Ryan and Jason to do all they can to make this really a good experience. If they're done the right way and if it beautifies what's going on in State Street. There's some great buildings that have been built. I always talk about colors. I think you did a partnership kind of with the city with that.
Yeah, we did at the time, CETO did a business loan with them.
So Cutler, and there are places like that that have come in. There's much others down State Street with stories, but they're kind of getting it. And hopefully as that happens, some of the places that would be less desirable they'll sell their property because all of a sudden, they can make some money to get out of town and let's bring in some better quality.
So this master plan that we have of transportation, was that developed in concert with what had been the State Street master plan of Orem? Were the two in discussion with one another? You see what I'm asking?
No, and just to speak in generalities, that the State Street master plan came out, and then all of the other master plans had to play catch up because they looked at the plan, this is our identity, okay, great, and then all the utilities were like, we gotta make sure we got capacity in our water and our sewer. Storm drain is one thing, I mean, you have impervious and impervious, it doesn't matter, but when you start going vertical, you're gonna have a big sewer load and a water load. I mean, so we went through and did some of those, and then with the transportation, really from a transportation standpoint, you're putting all those folks on a 7-lane facility, they really have no place to go. But for us, from a transportation standpoint, it was the better place to go because you already had capacity there. You had the lanes, you had all that. So instead of trying to go somewhere else where you're gonna drop, 1,200 units down on 4th West, thankfully it's right next to a university and everyone's walking there instead of being apartments and not students. That would have a totally different, look, right? So anyways, we had to play catch up a little bit. Planners got in front of us.
Well, I was gonna ask Jerry if he had any thoughts or concerns that you wanted to bring up for either further discussion or to recommend. So. So like I said, I think we've come back to some things, we've got some stuff that I think we could put together and say, this is what we recommend that we start having more discussions about
Or
further.
to move the city council, I think we're pretty close.
So can I ask, so are you gonna come up with a collective list and then send it us so we can put it in the staff report and
Yes.
be back to you?
I was gonna talk to Ryan, because Ryan, were you taking notes or not?
Cheryl is, so I just-
Cheryl is,
Yeah, Cheryl's gonna have better notes than me.
okay, no, I just, who I should talk to, because I've been scratching down what
So we can propose the minutes and then maybe send it out, make sure everybody's good with what is listed, and then that's what we'll bring forward as far as, recommending approval, but here's the suggestions.
Here's the
council
suggestions
consider.
that we forwarded to the city council.
Is that good
Does
good
that
direction?
sound,
Good, sounds great.
okay,
Thank you.
we feel good for that tonight, are we,
Excellent.
okay?
Yeah, been good, good discussion.
Yes.
No, thank you, and that's given us some ideas, things to talk about going forward too.
So Madeline, it's been like 3 hours, so the city normally makes food in it yet.
No.
There's some chips back there.
There's some cookies.
So I don't know that we can make the 16th, but are we okay bringing this back to the planning commission on the 6th of September,
I think the 6th of September would be
public hearings?
preferable for a lot of reasons.
We'll do that.
So, okay. Then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Oh, do I have to? I don't have to motion. I can just say it. So
We're not, yeah.
Yeah.
we're done.
Thanks, Mal.
Yes, we'll make a motion to, I make a motion to adjourn.
Looking second.
All in favor? Aye. Great.
All in favor, Lee?
Excuse me.
Everybody get up and move.
Yeah.